set that expectation that we get responses within 2 weeks to the issues, but at times we're waiting months, and despite follow-up, and it provides challenges at times. From my perspective, it's more about getting the financial statements to the Legislative Assembly and providing public accountability at that stage, and that's a challenge.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I didn't, if he did, maybe you need to restate it. The office, the audit office, do they give management and board a time frame to respond?
We have set the clear expectation that they respond within 2 weeks after the deadline, after we sent the report on the audit to them.
You give them 2 weeks.
That is the deadline we've set in our expectations. Whether that's met or not is another question.
You give two, but how long do you take to issue the findings?
After we completed the audit, we issue the findings straight to them as required under the auditing standards. We are required, before we put our opinion on the financial statements, to provide them with the details of the key issues that they need to address or consider before signing the financial statements.
That's what any department or government company that you would audit, you would issue the findings straight after you've finished.
Yes, and we have to be aware as well that the findings will have been discussed with the client throughout the audit as well, so they should have had chances to address some of these issues. And they have to have details of the misstatements, the errors in the financial statements, so they can correct the financial statements at the same time.
Mr. Chairman, where the audit complains of a matter, extra matters to a department or a company, do you provide supporting documentation to management with your findings?
We discuss the findings with them as appropriate, provide them with the relevant information. They will agree or disagree, and we will discuss the issues of disagreement, provide relevant information to them as appropriate.
Sounds right, Mr. Chairman. If only the audit office would give everybody that, afford everybody that opportunity to discuss before they write and publish.
Any further questions for the Auditor General or for this witness? Okay. Ms. Welcome, thank you very much for your testimony. And at this point then we will move on to and call our next witness, who is committee would like to call Ms. Tracy E. Banks to the meeting. She's the General Manager of the Cayman Islands Development Bank. Good morning, Ms. Banks, and thank you for coming along to the Public Accounts Committee meeting this morning. Could I ask you if you'd speak into the microphone, and also if you'd state your name and your position for the record?
Is this thing on? Oh. Tracy E. Banks, General Manager, CEO of the Cayman Islands Development Bank.
Thank you. Members of the committee, I leave it to you now to begin questioning these witnesses.
Mr. Chairman, through you, good morning, Banks. The going through the report here, the Auditor General has raised some rather serious matters relating to the financial accounting and reporting for the Cayman Islands Development Bank. Do you have an action plan to address these matters, and at what stage are you with those?
Actually, as this report was based on 2011 year-end's result, if you look at the Auditor General's report, you'll notice that there is an inclusion in there that clearly states that they found no reoccurrence of these incidences for 2012, as we have mitigated all these issues.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I guess I should say congratulations. Well done.
Mr. Connolly?
Mr. Chairman, thanks for that answer, Mrs. Eubanks. I think my one question is in terms of your capacity going forward from an organizational standpoint, and just in the matter of good financial reporting, do you think that you have the necessary complement now to do that for the years going forward, or is this still going to be an issue?
I'm not 100% sure what you want me to answer as far as the complement of senior management or that of a board of directors.
Meaning, sorry, Mr. Chairman, again through you, meaning that you've gotten to a point now where the accounts, the financial reports are satisfactory, but that was after, you know, pretty serious concerns raised by the Auditor General. What I'm asking is, do you think that going forward, you can maintain that, I guess, timely financial reporting, and do you think you need additional people on board to keep that consistent?
No, the senior management team that is in place there now are responsible for a lot of the tightening of the internal controls and weaknesses that were identified in the report. When a new board has been announced, the bank has a credit committee comprised of 3 board members and myself, and it also has an audit committee that will review internal controls and procedures. So that's basically the oversight for senior management as well.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of this witness?
Well, I guess I'll just ask the Auditor General. Your reports have now been addressed, or the concerns in your reports. Do you feel that they're adequately addressed, and that the CIDB is now on schedule?
In terms of the issues that were addressed in this report here, we have seen that they have been actioned in for the year ending 30th June 2012, and there has been no reoccurrence of the issues, and that the control environment has been strengthened regarding the specific items that we identify here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just follow on from that, and that is ultimately what we're looking for from our reports at the end of the day, that these things take forward and the organizations take account and move forward in their internal control environment.
Okay.
It's
Well,
about improvement agenda in reality.
yeah. Well, Mr. Chairman, through you, then I'd like to commend Ms. Eubanks, and we hope that all other entities take the same approach.
Thank you too then, Ms. Eubanks. I'd like to echo my congratulations to you in the forthright way in which you seem to have responded to the issues raised, and echo the comments of other members here that it's a type of response I think we would expect, and encourage and would like to see. So thank you for your testimony. I'm sorry you had to wait so long, but your time here has been fairly short as well. So thank you once again, and we'll excuse you at this point in time.
Thank you, too.
This time, the committee would like to call our next witness. I believe he's Mr. Fabian Worms, the President and CEO of Cayman Airways. And I believe we'll also have the CFO for Cayman Airways and the Chairman of the Board of Directors joining him.
And Mr. Chairman, I would like to commend, I don't know if it's Cayman Airways initiative or yours, but when we are here in Public Accounts Committee
Yes.
and reports, the Auditor General has, we are here to examine a report. The Auditor General made a report, he carried it to the papers or to the news media, and splashed everybody's name across the papers, and then we come to examine. But when we call to examine, we call to examine, as we just did, Miss Ebanks. We don't have the board people. At least the board chairman should be with them, so that, because they all work together, or they're supposed to work together. And particularly where accusations are made, the management might not know, but the board chairman might have an answer that can enlighten the committee and at least clear the air on what the Auditor General has made assumptions on or been told by somebody. So I'd like to commend the fact that we have Cayman Airways with a compliment with the managing director and the board.
Thank you, sir. Dr. General?
Just add a point of clarification for you, is that all the findings in this report have been reported to the management and the boards of the individual entities, in most cases some significant time ago, before they were compiled and consolidated in this report.
Okay, thanks.
I'm not talking about timeliness or anything. I'm talking about the fact that a report, mostly at most times in this, Mr. Chair, because it's important. Because how else do we clear the air? How else do we find out? You mean to say that we can only take what the Auditor General has written as the Bible? I don't. So all I'm saying is good that you have the board and the management together, so that we can talk to them about the issues that are before us, because the board works with the management works with the board. That is a fact.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to go ahead and welcome the Chairman, Cayman Airways, the CEO, Mr. Worms, and also the CFO. And Mr. Worms, would ask you if you could, or speak into the microphone, and if you would just state your name and your position, and if you would also state the names of those members who are with you and their positions for the record.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Fabian Worms. I'm the President and CEO at Cayman Airways. I'm accompanied by our Chairman, Mr. Philip Rankin, our Executive Vice President of Commercial Affairs and CFO, Mr. Paul Tibbetts, and our Internal Auditor, Mr. Darren Ali.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Members of the committee, questions for these witnesses?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, gentlemen. Mr. Worms, I see here that quite a number of the concerns raised in the audit have been met, and in fact, in 2012, there's good evidence that you're heading on the right track. Can are you willing to state, or would you like an opportunity to say, perhaps elaborate a bit on some of the challenges, or if there is challenges, and what those are in becoming fully compliant?
I could give a bit of a background as to the full circumstances relating to the financial reporting year ending June 2011. I'd like to start by speaking about what existed in 2010. Cayman Airways was faced at that time with a backlog of audits, only having the audit for 2005 completed at that time. This meant there were some 4 years of audits outstanding, which, if done in sequence, would have severely delayed the reporting for fiscal year 2011. To address this, the airline, in conjunction with the external audit firm, the Public Accounts Committee, and the Auditor General's Office, all agreed to a pragmatic solution which would see the 2010 financials audited in a timely manner and tackle the backlog thereafter. In order for the 2010 audit to be effectively completed, considering that the 4 prior years had not been audited, the 2010 audit was extremely comprehensive with the aim of capturing deficiencies from all 4 prior years. As a result, in 2011, the external audit firm opted not to conduct detailed control testing in many areas. And as such, much of what was in the internal controls report for 2011 actually relates to issues from prior periods. This matter has been raised with the external audit firm several months back, and they're now in completing their audit of the last fiscal year, 2011. They've indicated that this would be addressed going forward. In essence, much of the 2011 internal control report content was a repeat, or is a repeat, of the 2010 report, and included many issues from prior years which have actually been resolved or are in the process of being mitigated. Having said that, we've been on a path of not only getting caught up with our audits and our financial reporting, but we're also on a good path in ensuring that we have good controls in place to address any deficiencies and are very strong with mitigating controls. We've been active in addressing the issues surrounding our financial and IT systems in particular. We have made many changes in the management structure of our financial department in recent times to address the points raised regarding monitoring and review by senior management. We have also added a full-time internal auditor who happens to be with us today, so that's an indication of one of the steps that we took. For fiscal 2012, we have developed a new IT policy and procedures framework to address many of the issues raised in the Auditor General's report. And we're also looking forward to further enhancements to our IT controls due to the fact that the internal audit unit of government is currently conducting a detailed audit of our IT systems and controls. And we expect that to further assist us to bolster our IT controls. I hope that's helpful in terms of answering the question.
Thank you, Mr. Worms, and I should say congratulations to you and your team as well, for I see that you've fulfilled quite a number of the suggestions and issues raised by the audit team.
Mr. Worms, I'm just trying to get this. This covers your. I guess my question for you is, where are you now with 2012, 2013 audits and having those completed?
We're essentially on track, but I'll allow our CFO to speak in more detail to that.
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. The financials for 2012 have been completed and audited, so those are finished at this point. The Auditor General has completed his work on that as well. We use an outside audit firm, so the Auditor General also then has to review it as well. So we have 2 steps.
Okay.
The 2013 financials have been completed and are in the process right now of being audited. The external audit firm tells us that they expect to have the audit completed by December of this year. If we were able to accomplish that, that would be the fastest we've ever conducted an audit, but we are working on that track and we believe we can accomplish that.
Okay, thank you. Members have other questions of these witnesses? Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and for your testimony this morning. You are excused.
Thank you.
The committee would like to summon its next witness, Mr. Paul Hurlston, Managing Director, Port Authority. Good morning. Take a seat here on the right.
Paul Hudson not coming?
Pardon?
Paul Hudson not coming?
Please speak into the microphone. Turn it on.
I apologize for Mr. Hurlston this morning. He had to go to another meeting, he and the other deputy. The meeting concerning the port, the cruise port. Who's, I think what he's saying is that there's a presentation being done with other ministers of cabinet and his committee. So I apologize on his behalf.
I do have a little bit of a problem. He did confirm that he would be here at this committee meeting.
And Mr. Chair, I'm happy to see the officers here, but what these directors need to understand, and one and all, that when Public Accounts Committee call them, that, you know, and they particularly say that they're coming, they just can't go off and say, well, we got something else going on, so, you know, take it or leave it, we're not going to be there.
I do agree with you, member.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I want to ask him. I want to see his contract, and I don't know if the finance officer can give me his contract or not.
Mr. Chairman, you want me to answer that question?
Yes, if you can.
But I need for you to, if you would, to please state your name, your position, and in what capacity you are here as, because we'd had agreed to.
I'm the, James Parsons, the Chief Financial Officer of the Port Authority of the Cayman Islands.
I mean, I'm mindful to send a message to Mr. Hurlston to summons him to this, pardon? To tell him to come before this committee, because he has confirmed his attendance.
My suggestion is that's not, let's hold up. I mean, unless it's something here that the staff can't answer.
Yeah.
For this time, we will forgive him for absconding his responsibilities.
Can members, are members comfortable with proceeding, or I'm looking for guidance from you?
Mr. Chairman, I think we can proceed with people here, but I would still, I guess, request that he come as soon as he is available and he can make his testimony.
Yeah.
Then.
Could we ask that a phone call be made to Mr. Hurlston?
Mr. Chairman, the meeting that he's attending is starting right now. Do you have any idea how long this is going to last? I'm not certain, no.
All right, I think what I'm going to do, it's not the ideal situation. Let's go ahead and take what evidence
We can get.
that we can get from you two gentlemen, but I think we do want to go ahead and make efforts to reach Mr. Hurlston and ensure that he attends here today. All right, I'm going to open this up to members here for their questions of Mr. Hurlston, of Mr. Mr. Parsons. Mr. Parsons, would you state the name and the position of the gentleman next to you for the record?
For the record, Donovan Hutchinson, accountant for the Port Authority of Cayman Islands.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, through you, just asking what steps have been taken since the Auditor General's report to address the concerns that he highlighted in the report?
Mr. Chairman, are we going according to the numbers?
Yes, sir. You were, I recognize you to respond to Mr. Connolly's question.
Well, point number 6 to 9, and I will read this because this is something that was prepared by Mr. Hurlston. So, as far as the register of interest is concerned, the register of interest was put into place for the port director and his deputy directors during the fiscal year 2012. The board of directors at the time, the board of governors at the time were informed of the significance of the register of interest, but put it on the back burner until the third quarter of 2013, when the majority of them signed off on it. Currently, the current board has been advised of the significance of the register of interest, and some of them have complied thus far, and I'm following up on with the others.
You mentioned, if I hear then correctly, while you may have introduced this system of disclosure of register of interest through the register of interest, you still do not have full compliance of your board members to enable you to identify and record and disclose related party transactions?
Not all, because not all of them have complied with it, but we do have in place a system to identify related party transactions. All we need is for the directors to comply, the board of governors to comply.
I guess my question is not a particularly onerous exercise, to get these reports or, completed. I mean, do you understand why are there delays in getting these reports and being able to identify related party transactions?
Yes, some of them don't. Some board members are not doing what they're supposed to do. That is to comply with it. I can't, as an officer, as a management, as part of management, I can't go out and hold their hand, wring their hand. I give them I print off the document, explain it to them, and then it's left to them to sign and deliver.
Okay.
I must say that out of the 10 members, 3 of them have complied. And I explained the significance of the register of interest.
Mr. Chairman, just through you, that's 30% of them. Has the deadline been set for them? How are they going to be held accountable? Are they going to be not admitted to board meetings, some sort of sanction, etc., until they comply? What's the plan of action?
I am unable to answer that because I am not a part of the board. That would have to be done through the chairman or deputy chairman. I can, when I leave here now, I can send a strong message to the chairman that the members have to comply by Friday. If that's acceptable to the committee, I can surely do that.
Go ahead, sir.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just to say that I have met with a new chairman of the board for the Port Authority and has indicated that he is going to be looking forward to take forward such issues as this with the board and to bring into play the required policies for compliance with various issues, including related party or registers of interest.
Okay. Other questions then of these witnesses? Go ahead.
Mr. Bush, did you want to go ahead, or can I?
No, I give leeway to the government.
Thank you. You're very kind this morning. In the
Oh, I'm always kind, you know that.
in the report, there was talk about the non-compliance with the port regulations in the inability to charge tendering fees of some $548,000. Can you expand on that and tell us what's been done to address that specific point in paragraph 70?
Let me just give you the history behind that. The Port Authority in 2003 signed an agreement with the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association, and that in that agreement, no fees could have been increased, no additional fees implemented. The board at the time felt that, the tendering fees, which would not have affected the cruise lines directly through the port, decided, we will go ahead and implement tendering fees to the private tendering company. Well, what happened was the private tendering company went to the cruise ships and said, listen, we're going to have to increase our fees to you because the port has implemented this new fee. The FCCA came back to I believe it was the government at the time, and they said, this can't happen. Look at section, I think it's section 60, I think it is, or the section that talks about fees. There cannot be any new fees. And the board decided at that time, well, we'll have to go back to the old fees. As far as and I advised the board at that time that, management advised the board at the time, listen, this has to be something that has to be amended in the regulations then. And nothing was done. Only recently, this recent board, we have again addressed that with the board and let them know that there are a number of things in the port law and regulations that need to be addressed immediately, and this is one of them. But nothing has happened since the 2011, 2012, and 2013 audit.
just so I get something clear, we have Port Authority, Cayman Islands, have an agreement with Florida Caribbean Cruise Association. That agreement was for them to build the pier that we have now and upland works that we have. And to pay for that was offset by fees. Am I right?
You're correct. $1 fee, $1 per passenger.
And where we would fall below meeting the payment, they would increase the people,
Increase
passengers.
either the passengers or increase their contribution.
Right. And that is in the agreement.
Yes.
And also in the agreement is the fact that we couldn't charge them. There was no increase in fees to them. Am I right?
Right.
So what is it in regards, there's nothing with Tenders. Tenders is a company that works out of the port.
I agree.
Right. So what is the problem with charging them?
The problem is we charge them, and they have to in turn charge the Florida Caribbean
Mr.
Cruise Association.
Chairman, I understand what Mr. Parson has related. Florida Caribbean Cruise Association can't be charged by us, but they can't tell us that we can't charge the tender. If the tender can't pay, then the tender has to, it's a business. It's a business operation. That is not our fault from where I sit. If we are losing, as is said here, that's not the fault of Florida Caribbean Cruise Association. We should be charging the tender. That's what the Auditor General is saying. That's what you're all agreeing on. Mind you, I'm not necessarily agreeing because we made an agreement with Florida Caribbean Cruise Association to get what we got there. We wouldn't have got it. We wouldn't have had it. So I'm not necessarily agreeing that, that we are at fault somehow. Because if we can't, if we have an agreement, then the regulations should be amended to state that. And I don't know where the changes were or were not. Because actually, this is the first that I'm hearing about it. But I'd like to say to this committee, being a former member of tourism or minister for tourism, I'm a person that used to sit on the board and was on the board when we conducted the agreement to get and build the present port facilities. This is what happens. This is the first time I'm hearing about this. No, I know problems at the port in cargo, but I never heard about this. And if this is one of the problems when you're not on a board, you have chairman, you have people, but if you don't know, you don't know. But notwithstanding that, we do have an agreement that we have to abide by, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
But I don't see where if the Port Authority had to charge anybody else, not Florida Caribbean Cruise Association, because that's who we have the agreement with. Now, I understand what Mr. Parsons is saying. If we charge the tenders, then they're going to try to increase because nobody wants to see their profits go down. I mean, that's what this island is all about. Everybody got to get a shilling out of every 5 cents. That's how business operates in this country. So I quite understand that they would want to recoup whatever they're being charged. But that's not our problem. If we want to put on a fee, the Port Authority puts on a fee. No, I don't recall anything made to government to say that we should increase the port fees to that extent. I know there were other discussions on the cargo side, but I don't know that maybe they had, and maybe the decision was taken at one point. Yes, I think I can say that a decision was taken that we were not at that point in time would not consider increasing a fee because of the situation in the economy. But if it needs to do it, and if it's going to make the Port Authority fall apart, well, then we probably need to revisit it, as I'm saying.
But my position, my thinking is too that the second bullet point of this part of the report probably may have some impact as well. But in the report, Mr. Parsons, the Auditor General raised some serious concerns about the ability of the port to continue as a going concern. I find that highly unusual for this type of an entity. Can you explain to this? I know the port still continues to operate today. Whether it's doing so as a going concern is another matter. But can you tell this committee what specific steps have been taken by the port to try and address the issue with regard to the viability and the going concern of the Port Authority?
Over the years, the cargo has dropped. The cruise has also dropped. As a matter of fact, over the last 8 years, cargo has dropped like 50%.
By how much, sorry?
50%, and tonnage-wise.
Over the last 8 years.
Over the last 8 years. And cruise, 23%. The operational costs has remained basically the same. We had one small increase in fees, cargo fees, in 2010, and the same tender fee, the same time. I want to go back to the tender fees just to highlight something. This was brought into effect the 1st of April of 2010. The meeting of the 13th, the board of directors meeting on the 13th of May 2010, the board of directors decided, after hearing the complaint from the FCCA, decided right there in the meeting, this couldn't happen. So it didn't even get off the ground before it was scrapped. As far as what the port is doing, we have
just so that I'm hearing about it to that extent.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, through you. So it was presented to the board, you're saying, and it didn't go any further. That's what you're saying on the fees?
No, the fees were passed into regulations.
Right.
The same time that the cargo fees were presented to our cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And it came into effect, I think it was the 1st of April.
Right.
But
2010, if I heard you.
2010.
Oh.
But the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association said no. I wrote the letter to Caribbean Marine Services, who does the tendering, and they got back to, they went to the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association and said, listen, we're going to have to pass this on to you. And they said no. And they got in contact with, I'm assuming, because I wasn't a part of that part, but they got in contact with the Ministry of Tourism at the time, and they relayed the message to the chairman of the board, and the chairman brought it to the board, and it's minuted in the minutes that these fees, we would have to go back to the original old fees of tendering. As far as what the port is doing because of the going concern, there's not a lot the port can do as far as of cutting. We've cut salaries. We cut salaries about 7% in 2010. We have a lot of operational costs as far as the equipment. Our equipment is old, and it's right on the ocean, and it has to be maintained properly. We just had to rebuild do a major overhaul on one of the cranes that cost a lot of money, and we do everything out of cash. We had to do a second refurbishing, which wasn't as taxing on the cash. But to your question, I mean, what we are doing, I mean, there's not a whole lot other than cutting salaries and some other small operating costs, because the port is such a labor-intensive operation that if you start cutting a lot of personnel, it will be reflected on the service that we give and the safety of the operations. And none of the board, and I must say that the last board really never gave me, as the chief financial officer, much time to sit down and explain to them what the consequences would be. It's minuted from 2008. I've been telling the boards, this cannot continue. We have to find a way, either increase fees or let's downsize. One of the biggest, and Mr. Chairman, KPMG did a study for us in 2011, I think it was, that showed the cash flow for the next 3 years. And let me tell you, if board members at the time had taken note of this study, they would have seen that, listen, you know, we have a going concern problem, but there were recommendations made. Thankfully, we have paid off one of our loans, well, yeah, two of our loans now, which frees up, you know, over $500,000 a year, which is good. And one just got paid off in August, and the other got paid off, I think it was in January. And we're, you know, it frees up $500,000 a year, which in cash, which is good. But the previous board, and I always refer to the previous board because nothing comes through me as a CFO. Everything is just done through the board. Consultancy fees was over $1 million, and legal fees in the last seven years, and majority of that was done through the last board. I kept saying, listen, you know, we can't sustain this. But nobody took my advice on that. What we're planning now, and we have approached the board, and the board has been very generous in asking my opinion. We're looking at how best we can, raise fees that should have been raised 10 years ago over a period of time. Instead of doing a big thing now, and then 10 years later we do it, we'll stagger it over, say, 3 years.
Well, those types of measures, take some time to yield the results that are needed. What's happening with the port right now? I mean, in fact, are you seeking government subsidies as part of, to continue operations? Are you borrowing funds to continue to fund operations? I mean, what's happening? Because effectively you're telling me that you haven't been able to raise revenues. There's little scope for cutting on the cost side because of the huge fixed costs that you need to support and run a port. Clearly you're going to need resources from some sources to continue.
Well, indirect subsidy from government, and that is the insurance. Over the last, I think, 4 years, we've had to ask that we pay this over a certain period of time, and the cash isn't there because of all of the operating costs, the capital expenditure that I just mentioned, the consultancy and legal fees. So we are unable to pay government in a substantial amount. Right now, I think indirect subsidy, borrowings from government was up around, what, $3.5 million. And in the next 6 months, I don't see us putting anything towards that because we've had a rough summer.
When you say indirect subsidy, this is, you're referring to that you should have been paying government something?
I should have been paying government the insurance up front.
Yes.
When government send me a bill, and we've been doing that up until 2009. But again, because of the slumping economy, we were unable to make any payments.
Mr. Conley?
Mr. Chairman, through you. It's been 5 years, you said, you've been making recommendations to the boards, and none of them have taken any of those recommendations forward. In your opinion, why was that allowed to continue? I.e., an ineffective board that's not taking advice from the people crunching the numbers.
Mr. Chairman, I can't answer that because I only get called in the meetings. I don't sit on the board, and I can't answer that. I mean,
But you, Mr. Chairman, you used to go to like budget meetings of the board.
I used to present the budgets, and occasionally, but let me be abundantly clear. In the last 2 years, I was only invited to the board once, and that was to present the KPMG report. And I was given 15 minutes to make that presentation, and I was cut short 10 minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I don't think we can continue with the line of questioning that we have to without the managing director here.
Yes.
Because there's some serious concerns about governance. There's some, if you're telling me that you as chief financial officer has been to one board meeting in 2 years for 15 minutes.
Less.
And less. And we also have some of the paragraphs 149 to 155 to go over. Did you have something prepared from Mr. Harrelson that at least we can listen to beforehand? And then I think we need him here to answer some of these questions,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm hesitant to say so, Mr. Connolly, simply because I think whatever the statement might be, we're going to have to wait some time. I'd prefer to hear it from go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, no, let's go. No, go ahead, make your statement. Make the statement. We'll take the testimony later.
No. But that's all I can say. The only thing I want to add to the going concern, over the many years that the Port Authority in Cayman Brac been operating, it has been operating at a loss. And the subsidies that, we have to subsidize that operation to the tune of probably $500,000 a year. And it will continue unless something, another mechanism is put in place.
That is not new though. That has been for many years.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
We've subsidized
Yeah,
Cayman Brac.
right.
I was giving them funds every year.
Mhm.
And it's reaching now about 500,000 per year.
Yeah, yeah, yes. So that adds to the cash outflow for the port.
One question, Mr. Chairman, if he can say offhand, did cargo in Cayman ever pay for itself?
Yeah.
Cargo operation, or was it subsidized with the revenue from cruise?
Yes, the cargo was subsidized by itself, but
It
But-
ran by itself.
yes, but over the last 5 years, the cruise contribution has been very,
To keep cargo up.
yeah,
And basically, that's because we've been in this slump of an economy
yes,
for 6 years.
Yeah.
I mean, you might be saying 5, but probably go back and it'll 6. So it's because of the economic conditions of the island why cargo has not, well, cargo, as you said, we have lost at least 50% of it.
yes,
Yes.
yes. And we haven't kept up with the cost of doing business. I mean, we have a humongous cost for security that came into effect in 2004, and the port didn't start charging, fees for that. So that's another area that we're looking at to charge the cruise, not the cruise, the cargo operations. Because cargo operations is like between 75 and 78% of the revenue of the port. Cruise operations and tenancy at the port makes up the other between 22 and 25%.
Okay, Mr. Parsons, I think what I'm going to make my final decision at this here. I think I'd just prefer to wait until Mr. Hurlston can be here to give his testimony. Okay?
Mr. Chairman, I just had one question on the financials.
Okay.
If you can indulge me for a
Sure,
minute.
please do.
In terms of timely financial statements and you're responding to the Auditor General's report, can you tell us now going forward how that will work and how you've addressed the concerns that he raised in terms of meeting the statutory responsibility to deliver to table the financials in a timely fashion?
You mean getting the financials to the audit stage?
Yeah.
I must tell the committee that we have over the years been pretty on time, pretty much on time. The financials is due on the 31st of August, and I believe we got the financials on the 2nd. On the 2nd of August. And going forward, I don't expect to be any later than the end of July. Of course, they're draft in form, and if there's any audit differences, then those will be brought to our attention, and then we will have them run through the general ledger.
Mr. Chairman, again, through you, in terms of the obligation to prepare and table in the Legislative Assembly the annual reports, the Auditor General had raised in his report that this wasn't being done. So can you tell me now that this is now being done and will be done in a timely manner?
The answer to that is yes. From the Port Authority perspective, it's left to the ministry, because we don't present them. We give them to the ministry, and the ministry then presents them. And we had given the stuff to the ministry. I don't know what happened, but they came back again this year asking for the same information. Recently, for 2011, I think they presented 2012, the early part of this year, and 2011, I think, has come before the Legislative Assembly now. As far as the Port Authority is concerned, as soon as we get the audited financial statements, we can put the information together, and we give all the copies, everything that the ministry needs, the minister needs to present to the Legislative Assembly.
Auditor General.
I just want to confirm the position from our perspective is that the 2000 30th June 2012 financial statements were signed off in December 2012, and they were tabled in the Legislative Assembly on the 14th of March 2013, at which time the 2011 financial statements have still not been tabled in the Legislative Assembly.
Yeah, that confirms what I just said. You know, they were asking me for information, and that I had already given them.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions of these witnesses? Okay, if there are no other questions, then Mr. Parsons, exclude you both from, and thank you for your testimony, and excuse you from the meeting.
You're welcome, members.
Okay. The clerk is going to be contacting him. She's trying to contact him now. If you have a direct line, can let him know we're trying to reach him to bring him here. Please do. Okay. Thank you. All right, final witness before lunch, we break for lunch, is Mr. Kerith McCoy, the acting CEO of the Cayman Islands Airports Authority. And I'd like to call him into as a witness. And he's going to be two additional attendees, Melantha Wright, who is a financial controller, and Tusa Kutzanayi, who is a temporary CPA working in their finance department. Mr. McCoy, good morning and welcome to Public Accounts Committee. Good to see you again today.
Good morning,
For the
everyone.
record, would you please state your name, your position, and that of each of the additional attendees to your right?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Through Chairman Kerith McCoy, I'm the acting CEO of the Cayman Islands Airports Authority. With me is Ms. Melantha Wright, our financial controller, and we're joined today by a temporary CPA in our finance department, Mr. Tusa.
Thank you, sir. You have a statement or anything you might like to give before we move on, go to questioning, Mr. McCoy, or can we go proceed directly?
You can proceed, sir.
Okay.
Thanks.
Members of the committee, open for questioning of these witnesses. Mr. McCoy, if I could ask you, on page 12 of the report, paragraph number 41, talks about the inability of the port to identify and record and disclose related party transactions. Can you tell the Public Accounts Committee what steps you have taken to address this matter that has been raised by the Auditor General?
Yes, sir. Subsequent to the Auditor General's report, the CIA has addressed for financial years 11, 12, 12, 13 this notice of interest disclosure by all senior management members and directors, with the exception of 3 directors of the past board and 1 director of the current board. We continue to exercise efforts to have those persons submit their notice of interest.
What efforts are being made, Mr. McCoy, to try and get this one person within your board to respond? I mean, just from my experience as an auditor, it doesn't strike me as being an issue that should be particularly onerous or to be able to comply with.
I do agree, sir. I'll just ask Ms. Wright to clarify the measures that she's undertaken so far, if I may, please.
Mr. Chair, we've just made follow-up. We have a board secretary in place. We've made follow-up with her via email, copied the CEO and the chairman of the board. So outside that, there's no real.
Have you set any deadlines for the collection of this information?
September 30, sir.
What's, pardon?
September 30.
September 30th. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, through you, the deadline of September 30th, what happens if that goes past and you don't have the information? Did that correspondence set out any kind of action for penalties, for accountability, if that member just refuses?
If I may, through the chairman, I'm not aware that the management of the CIA has the authority to exercise penalties against the board members, but I would imagine and expect that the seriousness and the obligation to comply is appreciated, and we expect full compliance.
Go ahead. Mr. McCoy, I just want to focus in on an item, and particularly on paragraph 123, where they talked about some shortcomings with regard to leases and potential there for revenue leakage. What steps have you taken to address those issues?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman and Board. A number of those leases, in fact, the majority of the leases have been executed. There remain some relating to government departments, tenancy at the airport. And in my response to the Auditor General on that matter was in discussion between ourselves and the Lands and Survey Department, which represent those government departments. Subsequently, the Cayman Islands Airports Authority and the Cayman Islands government has entered into a recent arrangement that while it will not impede the execution of the leases, it did impact some of the negotiations that I referred to earlier on. So now that these arrangements have been concluded, we expect the Lands and Survey Department to proceed post haste to get those government leases effected. In a couple of cases regarding some of our tenant airlines, we had some airlines ask for time to have legal advice on some of the lease content, and we have mutually agreed to have the matter resolved again by September 30th, that they will have had ample time to get their legal questions answered and move forward. But by and large, a majority of the leases have been already concluded.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. McCoy, in the Auditor General's report, there were some observations, and I know this is historical now to a certain degree, about the board overstepping its functions of governance, and it set out some of the occurrences, or I gave examples. Sorry. How has this been corrected in terms of going forward now with the new board being put in place in relation specifically to roles and expectations?
Through the chair, Councillor Connolly. First of all, the board invited presentations by the Auditor General's Office to define the issue of governance and the concerns highlighted as a matter of familiarity. And that was quite a beneficial process. From that, the board has engaged the drafting of a governance policy. And as a matter of fact, it is on the agenda for next week's meeting for review.
And again, Mr. Chairman, through you, will the board be expected to sign anything acknowledging these obligations and any sort of sanctions that may occur, i.e. them losing their position or anything to that regard?
Again, sir, I would not be authorized to speak on the consequences. However, it's fully expected that once this governance document is accepted and formalized, to be accommodated, and I think that process will involve having the further input of the Auditor General's Office in order to ensure the suitability of application. Then again, I would venture to say the board would be committed to complying with the requirements, and all indications is that the board is quite committed to proceeding in that direction.
Auditor General.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just to answer, to provide some context for the members' information. Some of the issues around the sanctions and enforcement of that are a broader question for the relationship between statutory authorities, government companies, and core central government. And I know this is an issue that is being considered by, I think, the Deputy Governor's Office and the government at this time in terms of public authorities laws and so forth. In terms of the engagement with the Airports Authority, we have been engaged with them to talk about the governance issues, the new board, and also the Port Authority and the National Roads Authority at this time. And we are looking at providing them with some more guidance, advice around this going forward in the next few months to help them drive through the issues of what we see as appropriate governance and the processes and policies that they need to put in place to ensure that's effectively managed.
It's fair to say then, Auditor General, that you're satisfied with the response that you're getting of the board of the Aviation Authority?
We've had very good engagement with the new board at this stage, so we're looking forward to trying to work with them to take things forward.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, through you again, then just to ask, just for general edification, as a matter of course, does the Attorney General's Office, Auditor General's Office, do this to all government boards?
It's obviously a question of resourcing. We try to engage with boards to talk about what governance as appropriate. There's a good opportunity at this time to talk about these issues, and we have been talking to government about what they can do to try and provide training to members regarding their role on boards. What is the role of a board? What is the appropriate division of responsibilities between boards and management? And I believe that the portfolio of the civil service, I may be wrong with that, are looking at how they can provide effective training and guidance to new board members who are engaged on the statutory authorities and government companies going forward. But we do see a role as providing advice and as well from ourselves how much we can give as a function of the resources that we have at our disposal to do that, but we will try wherever we can to help and engage them where that's possible.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just had one other question, I guess, in terms of the effective management of conflicts. And this is to the Auditor General again. Did you specifically, when you went in to speak to the board, advise on how to identify conflicts, how to, I guess, declare conflicts, and just what should happen when a conflict is declared?
We have had initial discussions around those issues. Over the course of the last few years, we've been providing advice around this issue because it's a significant issue from our perspective, and providing copies, for example, of the policies that my office has employed around conflicts of interest and independence and various other factors and ethics, so that people can see what we do, which probably goes beyond what a standard conflict of interest register would do because of the role that we have as an organization. But we provided that guidance to many people, and it's clearly one of the major parts of any advice we provide on governance around how people manage those conflicts and effectively manage them so they don't impede the business of the board.
Thank you.
Mr. McCoy, I do have one final question regarding paragraph 122 with regard to the two instances of non-compliance with the financial regulations. And I recognize this is historical, but has the authority made any changes to the way in which it deals with these matters? And if they have, can you share with us what they are?
Mr. Chairman, absolutely. In my role as acting CEO, I have initiated a new culture of appreciation for the management of public finances. We have implemented measures to adhere to the PMFL requirements in the guidance relating to procurement. We have undertaken more vigorously to ensure that comparative purchasing or procurement for services is implemented across the board, regardless of the value amount, so as to ensure value for money. And this has been over the last 9 months that I've been acting. I must clarify that, unfortunately, what is experienced is a cultural, or it has to be enforced as a cultural shift. And while these measures have been implemented as a matter of policy now and procedure, we are hopeful that the persons involved are on board. I do ensure to remind persons of consequences for non-compliance with established policies. But what I'm speaking to is the hope that a mindset will be changed from what people were accustomed, or how people were accustomed to performing, to what is now the expectation.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, again, through you, in the incidents that were set out in the report, how, going forward, will you ensure, not just, I guess, remind and try to persuade, how will you ensure that things go out and are properly tendered and at least, advertised so that it's a fair system?
So through the chairman, Mr. Connolly, we have implemented a procedure where all procurement based on the values that are identified in the PMFL law, in the guidance, and those are 20,000, 50,000, and 250,000 thresholds, are implemented either by a departmental tender process or a public tender process or a CTC evaluated process as per the value. Nonetheless, again, we've documented, we've prepared a documentation and a required process that the financial controller and myself review all purchases to ensure that we have not just accepted, say, the first quote. Our signing policy allows senior managers, for example, heads of our individual internal departments, to sign for up to $3,000 worth of expenditure. And while that remains the case, what we discovered was that there had been very little oversight into that. People who were authorized to sign up to $3,000 could buy anything up to that value without having a comparative process. We have now implemented that even though that authority still exists, we must be provided with evidence that any procurement has been established on a comparative basis.
Okay. Well, are you satisfied, Mr. McCoy, that the new processes and policies are effective in achieving what they were intended to do?
Mr. Chairman, we are satisfied that the processes and the new documentation will indeed achieve what we set out to do. As I said earlier on, we are vigorously encouraging the change in the mindset, because while paper and procedures are one thing, compliance with those is the crux of achieving what we set to achieve, and that's a human factor.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
And just one follow-up on, I think, your question on the leases. How does that actually occur in terms of, I guess, advertising, ensuring that everyone has fair access to the space at the airport, and it remains competitive. So, what's that system that you have in place, and has that changed recently as well?
Through the chairman, Councillor Carney, that's an excellent question. We have just engaged the services of a local company to assist us with guiding through establishing a selection criteria for tenancy. We've never had such a program. Historically, we have had the same tenants from the time that this airport terminal was commissioned in '85, and in most cases they were carryover tenants from the old airport. So the way that business was done traditionally hasn't served the way that business should be done now. So while we've not had the need per se, we haven't engaged in any new tenancies, the failure of not having any criteria to determine our tenancy policy or tenancy process has been recognized, and I have vigorously engaged a program of establishing a selection criteria. So we're right in the middle of that as we speak.
Thank you, through the chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
in connection with this good governance audit, can Mr. McCoy tell me how many people were employed recently in the last, well, since January? And how was they employed? Who hired them? Who gave permission? In fact, before he does that, can he tell me I don't know who the chairman, who the members of the board are now?
Through Mr. Chairman, the members of the current board are Mr. Kirkland Nixon as chairman, Mr. Thomas Guyton as deputy chairman, Mr. Joel Jefferson, Ms. Vanessa Banks, Mrs. Vanessa Banks, Mr. Bruce Smith, Mr. Strand Bodden, myself as ex officio, Mr. John Magoo, and Mr. Nat Tibbetts,
And
Mr. Nathaniel Tibbetts. And to answer your question, Mr. Bush, there have been two hirings since, you said in the last 6 or so months?
from
Well,
January.
Yeah, from January, yes, sir. There have been 2 hirings. The post of board secretary and the post of senior internal auditor. The board secretary's position, I guess, speaks for itself. Her mandate reports directly to the board of directors. She is not considered an administrative officer of the Airports Authority. The post of senior internal auditor functionally requires that post holder to be more administratively involved at the time of the recruitment of that post holder. It was seen that the post would again report directly to the board. I think the intention is to have objectivity for the function of the post. Objectivity is required, and so it was structured that post reports also to the board. As everybody will know, we were unsuccessful recently in trying to recruit a chief human resources officer.
A chief,
Human resources officer.
you were successful,
Unsuccessful.
unsuccessful.
Yes, sir.
You don't have one now?
No, sir.
So recent times, the board secretary was employed.
The board secretary, the 2 employments were those 2 that I identified: board secretary and senior internal auditor. Mr. Tusa here to my right is a temporary employee. We have an arrangement with a recruitment firm just on a temporary basis for his services.
For human resources?
No, sir. It's in finance.
Finance.
Due to significant workload. But he's not an employee of the Airports Authority.
Who hired the secretary?
I would say that as a senior executive, I was not involved
Right.
in the hiring of the board secretary.
This came from the ministry.
I was not involved to the degree that I can even answer that accurately, sir.
It was not the board.
It may have been.
It may.
Again, by not being involved at all, I'm a bit
But
a bit unsure. I must admit, I was not involved at all.
you were not involved, but Mr. McCoy, you are an executive on the board.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you would know whether the board hired or not.
It is my belief that the board hired the board secretary.
The board has a very wide remit. Including the remit of hiring the director. I think once that is, and other staff, maybe you can elaborate on it?
Under the law, the board's remit for hiring is exclusive to the chief executive.
Stays with the toe,
Yes, sir.
The
To the
chief
post, to
executive.
the post of,
post,
yes, sir.
of course, after consultation with, and the ministry can give general directions.
The law allows the ministry to be consulted in matters of the administration of the Airports Authority. I do not believe that it extends to the hiring of the chief executive.
The minister may, after consultation with the authority, give such general and lawful directions in writing form as to the policy to be followed by the authority in the performance of its functions, and the authority shall give effect to those directions. Any direction given to or decision made by the minister which affects the members of the public and which is not of an internal or administrative nature shall be published in the Gazette, but no such direction shall apply in respect of a matter pending before the authority on the day on which the directions are published. The audit complains that the board members participating on project evaluation committees, any board member for procurement, and the audit says that they're operating in a capacity beyond the oversight. It's obvious that this board is more than, according to this law, is more than oversight.
Are you asking me or are you?
Well, I'm stating. And the audit complains that there were applications for businesses to operate at the airports approved. Would Mr. McCoy know which businesses were approved by the board? Applicants?
Through the chair, Mr. Bush, in the context of the date reflected in the audit, year ending 30th of June 2011, I must acknowledge that my seniority was not to the level that it is now, and therefore my involvement would have not been, I would not have been privy to information at that time. So I'm unable to answer you as to which businesses, as per the Auditor General's report, which businesses the board was involved in selecting.
So you don't know
No, sir.
if there were any at all?
That is true. I don't know if there were any at all. I take the Auditor General's report for the value that it demonstrates. I have no reason to otherwise, but
And maybe
can't
the
sit
Auditor
here.
General, he's here, so maybe he can answer which businesses, because I'm eager to know that. And it all has to do with Mr. Chair, in case you're wondering where I'm going.
I'm trying to see the relevance of it, Mr. Bush.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you have the report in front of you. You look at 119.
I can't provide you with specifics about the businesses, but what I will say is that the facts contained in this report were agreed in a meeting with myself, the board chairman at the time, the chief executive officer at the time, Mr. Jeremy Jackson, and the other members at that time.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the same one, Mr. Chairman, that says that I gave them certain directions. Minister don't give according to this law, any directions outside of directions to the authority. That's what the minister gives, general directions of the minister authority shall not proceed with any plans. So I'm trying to find out whether just that this is being generalities, a process of generalities where somebody says something. Where are the factual basis when you put it in the report? And again, Mr. Chairman, we are here. We are talking about people that this country has appointed who has given the service free to the country. Board members throughout this country. What's going to happen here? We're not going to get anybody to serve on boards, Mr. Chairman, because of these sort of reports. Everything is making them look as bad as possible. They're in conflict. They are working beyond their capacity as a board. And yet we have such a long thing here about the Civil Aviation Authority, or I call it Civil Aviation, but Airports Authority. And we don't have anybody from the board, the chairman, not here, to tell us what he done or what he didn't do. And the present acting director can't tell you because nothing was given to him. This was dependent upon the say-so of the former director who was off for various reasons and not in post. I don't know. Do you have anything here, Mr. Chairman, other than the Auditor General's report to say that any of this is factual?
No, but I have no reason to doubt the accuracy
Well, that's
of it.
you, Mr. Chairman. I am a member of this committee. And I have already proven that to you and this committee that what is said sometime in these reports are not the facts.
Mr. Bush, the testimony before this committee from the Auditor General is that this report and the contents were discussed with the appropriate members of the board and the staff of the Civil Aviation Authority. And I accept that as fact.
You accept that, Mr. Chairman. That might be the chairman accepting it, but the chairman can accept it for me, and he might accept it for his colleagues, government members across the way, but he can't accept it for me. And I have already complained, even in the billings from the audit office, I don't want to see one-liners. I don't want to see just a one line saying that this is what we got to pay out. I want to see proof. Because people's name are being besmirched and people's reputation are being besmirched. People that gives their time and their effort and their knowledge, people who have stood the test of time in this country and helped to build this country, whether this committee want to recognize that or not. In a report to me, I certainly recognize it when people's name is being besmirched and pulled here, there, and everywhere. So, Mr. Chairman, some of the questions that I'm asking, you say it's not relevant. I'm talking about good governance.
I never said they weren't relevant. I said I was struggling to understand the relevance and where you were going with the line of questioning.
If you were
And the
struggling,
statements.
all you had to do, Mr. Chairman, look at page 26 out of 119.
Mr. Chairman, I've clearly stated how we clear our reports and how we ensure factual accuracy after our financial audits and through our performance audit reports. And I don't believe there's anything that worthwhile saying at this stage any further on this matter.
All I'm saying, Mr. Chairman, that maybe in the past, but that this is the way we operated it, the Auditor General could just come in and state because he went and talked. I am a member of the committee. I haven't talked to anybody. So who am I going to where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? When I have seen, listen, I've seen a lot of things here that I know is assumptions. Yesterday I was contradicted, and let me explain, because it's all relevant. I was contradicted that there were two people that did a report, and that one of them were in conflict who was a consultant to the audit office, because that person had worked and had failed their duty, and a person had died, and they were let go, and they came back to try to get business. That person was a consultant. They wrote a huge report, Mr. Chairman. That's what I was speaking to. So it is relevant that we might not have all the exact fact, but it's something to what we're saying because it existed. It existed. All I'm saying is that when we are here talking about what somebody did, that person ought to be here with the CAA people to answer questions. In other words, Mr. Chairman, if we are here besmirching Mr. Frankie Flowers, Mr. Dick Arch, Colin Powery, or Customs, or fire representatives, then perhaps that chairman ought to be here to give an account of what they did and did not do and how they carried out their responsibility.
Mr. Chair.
And in this day of modern, you want everything open and transparent, and it's good governance. So good governance is one-sided? I hope not.
Mr. Chair, and just a suggestion in that we're starting to name names of people that aren't in the reports, and I would think that we shouldn't.
I can name names, but I'm not accusing, because the truth is, the names that I am naming, Mr. Chairman, have been accused. And I'm here, in other words, Mr. Conley, as a lawyer, I'm trying to defend. And I'm not doing so in any disparaging way.
No.
I'm saying that they are being accused. And I'm trying to defend their position.
Mr. Chair.
You should too, because you're
Mr. Chair, through you, it's exactly with that hat on that I was raising those, because this is a public forum, and if they aren't named in the report, then we're raising some allegations or some names for the first time.
I called names, Mr. Chairman, because we found what it says here on page 26, and this is what went out. We saw the whole thing play out in the papers. At 100.119, section 119, we found that the board was operating in a capacity beyond the oversight role described above. For example, board members sitting on an interview panel to recruit employees at a grade level below senior management, board members participating on project evaluation committees for procurement, approving applications for businesses to operate at the airport, and approving decisions for the disposal of equipment and the hiring of personnel. Now, do they have that responsibility? Did they do it? Why must I come here and agree to a report when I have no knowledge of it? I don't know. And I'm sure that the two members across the way don't know. I'm sure that my colleague don't know. I'm sure members from the Treasury Department, and I'm sure that you don't know.
Mr. Bush, I think we need to take a step back here. And no one's asking at this point to agree to or disagree with a report. We are simply taking the evidence, and as a committee, we have to consider this at the end of it. Now, I think things are just, in my mind, are just getting a bit too heated, and we're getting to the point where we are naming people and calling names, and I'm very uncomfortable with the committee doing that when they aren't named in the report. And I think we need to pull back and just cease from doing that. At this time, I mean, I'm going to try to bring things to a close for the lunch period, but I just want to, if there are any final questions for these witnesses.
Mr. Chairman, through you, I do have a question, because if, and this goes back to not naming names, but asking Mr. McCoy whether or not the authority has hired any employees whatsoever on the advice or direction of politicians.
Not to, through the chairman, not to my knowledge, any content regarding the recruitment of staff with board members or political directive, I'm not aware of.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, just through you to Mr. Bush, I think that's, in my mind, wearing my lawyer's hat, that's the appropriate line of questioning, not naming specific names. I mean, we're all here looking out for our constituents, but once we bring them in the public forum in a public setting, then those names can be reported, and in some instances, people can make certain inferences with those names. So
Chairman?
I'm uncomfortable with that, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, he asked about politicians. I'm talking about board members. Two different things. I certainly, if this report hadn't been made public, if it hadn't said the board, and if there was not an argument back and forth in the public arena already in both the CNS and the Caymanian Compass by the members that I have just here, and if they weren't already named, they were already named. They were already named and accused and found guilty, and they are not here, and they haven't been asked any questions by anybody. And if we were doing the right thing, Mr. Chair, you would be calling them. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chair, if I may, just on a point of clarity, my response is in the context of this report before the committee, the year ending 30th June 2011. And as I said, my knowledge specific to that time frame, any persons who were involved during the scope or during the time frame of the scope which this report covers, my responses were framed in that context.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McCoy, at this time we'll go ahead and excuse you. Thank you for your testimony. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break now for lunch. We'll be back in 1 hour at 1:20.